Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Today, we are heading back into the future part of our FutureFight Vanguard series with V-BT10. So we're starting V-BT10 today with a deck that is near and dear to my heart. We're going to be covering the Luard deck today, which is a Shadow Paladin deck, pretty much the premier deck coming out of BT10. I think that is definitely the strongest deck coming out of BT10, and it has a lot of insane tools. It actually got hit with an emergency ban list before the deck even is going to hit English because it was just that strong in combination with some of the other cards in the set, so they had to hit it. So this FutureFight is going to be a post-ban list Luard build, which is still probably the strongest, deck in the set. And so if you guys know anything about me, you know that this deck is near and dear to my heart because Luard, the old version at least, was the card in the deck that was able to take me to my first World Championships. And I kind of just, had always played Shadows before that point. So it was really cool to be able to, win a tournament and go to the World Championships for the first time. So now looking back, having been to Worlds multiple times, looking back, it's just really near and dear to my heart. Luard as a card, I've just always liked its card design, always liked its effect, because I really like cards that recycle cards that you have and then call it out, so you don't have to worry about making your deck thicker because you're basically recycling to call out more cards. And so that's very cool, and it also retires a lot of your opponent's cards as well, which makes it really good for control against your opponent. But we're going to get right into the video here. If you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below. Click that bell button so you don't have to miss any future Cardfight content going forward. Also, be sure to click that like button if you like the video. Comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the build, or let me know your thoughts of Luard in general. Do you like Luard? Do you hate Luard? Do you think it's too strong? Or do you think, they should have hit it in a different way? Let me know down in the comment section down below. Also, be sure to check out that join button if you guys want to become a channel member. If you guys want to support the channel and get into, custom things like the custom Discord, all that stuff, and just support the channel a little bit further. And also be sure to check out my second channel down in the description below, Let's Plays Animes, if you guys are interested in anime, animation, or video games. So let's get right into the Luard deck today. Boom, 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 boom. Alright, so as you guys know, if you guys play G format, there are no longer any more grade 4s that exist outside of the main deck. So, surprisingly, Drag Driver, which it was before a grade 4, is not a grade 4 in this deck. It is instead a grade 3. So that actually makes this really cool, because if it's a grade 4, it probably wouldn't have had Force, but it does have Force, and Luard has Force. So with this, you get to kind of perform a pseudo stride type thing, where kind of like what Gear Chronicle does, where you use an ability to go to Superior Ride another card from your deck, and then at the end phase you Superior Ride back to Luard. So basically you can get 3 force markers in a turn with this deck, and that's just part of what makes it so super duper strong. It's just a very strong card. So let's get right into the build here. So we're running 4 Dragheart Luard. So obviously it says on area, it doesn't say this on the card, but on area it says you can only run this card if you don't have the V-Series version of Skull Witch the main in your deck. So this is the restriction that I was talking about. You cannot run the V-Series Skull Witch the main and V-Series Dragheart Luard in the same deck, because it allows for kind of like a broken Superior Ride combo that I'm not going to go into too much, since it just doesn't exist anymore. Like, at least the exact way to get to that Superior Ride is a lot harder to get to, so I'm not going to discuss it because it's not part of this build. But if you guys want to look that up, I'm sure there is plenty of videos and resources out there for you guys to be able to see how it worked before it got hit. And then as for Luard's actual abilities, he has 2 Vanguard abilities. The first one is you can retire 2 grade 1 rear guards. So if you guys know about Luard in general, Luard has always been very grade 1 base, so we're running a very large amount of grade 1s in this deck because it's a toolbox. So this deck is a toolbox deck for grade 1s, and so basically you want to get the grade 1s that you need during the time that you need them, and you can just do that by using Luard skills. So first skill is retire 2 grade 1 rear guards. Draw a card, and then you choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So it's kind of a quote-unquote break even, because you're minusing 2 by putting 2 grade 1 to the drop zone, so that you can draw 1, and so that negs out that minuses out one of your your -2, and then you get to retire one from your opponent. And depending on how you consider pluses and minuses, that could be considered a -1 to your opponent, which is a +1 for you. So it's kind of a break even in that way. And then also this helps you get your grade 1s to the drop zone so that you can put them back with the second ability to be able to superior ride Drag Driver. So its second ability is during the main phase. This ability's cost is reduced by Counterblast 1 for each grade 1 in your drop zone. So the original cost of this ability is Counterblast 3. However, it's reduced by every grade 1 in your drop zone. So if you have 3 grade 1s or more in your drop zone, this card costs no Counterblast. If you have 2 grade 1s in your drop zone, this card costs Counterblast 1. If you have 1 grade 1 in your drop zone, this card costs Counterblast 2. And then if you have no grade 1s in your drop zone, which is pretty much impossible, it will cost Counterblast 3. But it'll pretty much almost never cost Counterblast 3 or even 2. At the worst, I think it will cost Counterblast 1. But if you're playing the deck properly, there should be no way that you're ever paying Counterblast for this card skill. So it should just be free. But you get to, after you pay the cost, or don't pay the cost, you know what I mean. But you get to return 2 normal units from your drop zone to your deck, and then search your deck for up to 1 Drag Driver Luard, write it as stand, and shuffle your deck. And then at the end of this turn, you get to ride a Dragheart Luard from your soul as rest. So a couple things about this ability. Firstly, you get to superior ride a Drag Driver, which, like I said before, has force. So when you go down during the end phase to Dragheart, will have gotten 3 force markers in the turn. And then also, when you re-ride Dragheart, you don't have to send Drag Driver from your soul to the drop zone, because usually cards like this that have these type of abilities, they usually retire the card that's currently on the Vanguard circle, which in this case would be Drag Driver, and then they re-ride the lower copy so that that card isn't adding a soul to you. So this card not only adds soul when it goes back to Dragheart Luard, however, Drag Driver has an ability that directly has to deal with the amount of Luards that are in your soul. So that makes the turn 2, turn 3, you know, as far as like the amount of turns that you're on grade 3, it makes your grade 3 turns more and more and more and more and more powerful, because it just ramps up with the Drag Drivers that you pseudo stride just staying in your soul. Then also, because you can return 2 normal units, you can always just return a Drag Driver as well. If you see that you hit some in your damage zone, or you have one in your hand or something like that, you can always discard it during your opponent's turn guarding or something like that, so that way during your turn, when you have Dragheart, you can just put 2 normal units back to ensure that you will have a Drag Driver in your deck to superior ride. So moving on to our next grade 3, which is for Drag Driver Luard. It has 2 Vanguard abilities. The first one is during your turn, this unit gets plus 5,000 power for each of your grade 1 rear guards. And then if you have 2 or more grade 3 cards in your soul, which you pretty much will the second turn onwards, then the original critical of all your grade 1 rear guards becomes 2. So you don't have to go Force 2 in this deck ever, because you already have Force 2 on your grade 1s through this card's ability. And then on Vanguard Circle, when it's placed, you get to Counterblast 1 and search your deck for the number of cards in your soul with Luard, plus 1 grade 1 cards, and call them to Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. So basically, if you have 1 Luard in your soul, like let's say that the first time you're using this skill, you ride to grade 3, you ride Dragheart, and then you go into Drag Driver. If you Counterblast 1, you'll get to call 2 grade 1s because you have 1 Luard in your soul, and then whatever that number is, plus 1. So the turns after that, let's say that you re-ride another Luard, you would have 1, 2, 3 Luards in your soul, I think. So then you'd be able to call 4 grade 1s. So just keep kind of track of that, and be careful with your Soul Blast as well, because there's definitely some games where I Soul Blasted out some Luards, and then the first condition, where my original critical would all become 2 for my grade 1 rearguards, I did not obtain. I mean, most of the time my opponent was at 5 damage anyway, so it didn't really matter. But you know, just in case, keep track of that. Then for our grade 2s, we only run 8 grade 2s. That's because, you know, we have a grade 2 that is kind of searchable, quote unquote. And so it's like we didn't have a single game where we played where I didn't get to grade 2. So I'm not worried about the fact that I'm only running 8. But we have 4 Drag Wizard Leofall. So what Leofall does is on Vanguard Rearguard Circle, when placed, you Counterblast 1 and then search your deck for up to 1 grade 1 card. Call it to open Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. So in this deck, you have the grade 1, which is Drag Wizard Niece. And when you ride this card, it allows you to look at top 7 for a Luard or a Leofall. So that's why, you know, you kind of are able to run less grade 2s. And then also, if you already have a Leofall and you already have a Dragheart, when you go for Nice's skill, if you find a Leofall, having double Leofall and 1 counterblast open can be so destructive just because of the existence of Black Sage Sharon. So you would basically Leofall into Sharon to countercharge, Leofall into Sharon, and then you can use something else that costs a counterblast, or Soul Blast, and then you'll be able to rush your opponent down really hard, and that won't even be, you know, counting for, you know, what you will be doing when you get to grade 3, which is ridiculous. So, yep, that is Drag Wizard Leofall, and then we have Drag Wizard Morphessa at 4 for our other grade 2, which is really just counts as a grade 1, because its continuous ability is when it's on the rearguard circle or in the deck. If you have a Vanguard with Luard in its name, aka if you're on grade 3 in this deck, this card will get -1 grade. So you will be able to search it out as a grade 1 card from Drag Driver, and then also when it's on the rearguard circle, it counts as a grade 1, which is important because you have cards that exist like Knight of Strict Order Souls, which is if you have 5 or more grade 1 rearguards, this unit gets plus 15k. So it's very important that it counts itself as a grade 1 on the rearguard circle as well, and not just in the deck. And then its other rearguard ability, which is what makes it really, really good, is at the end of the battle that it attacked, if you have 4 or more other rearguards with original grade 1, which means that you can't have 2 Morphessas on the board and use this ability. However, if you have 4 more other rearguards with original grade 1, you can counterblast 1 and retire this unit, and then you can get to call up to 1 grade 1 from your drop zone to rearguard circle. So also, another thing that they made sure that they covered is you cannot call another Morphessa off of Morphessa, because Morphessa in the drop zone is not a grade 1. However, Morphessa in the drop zone can still be returned, because Luard, Dragheart Luard doesn't just return grade 1s, it returns any normal unit. So you can also put Morphessas back with its card ability. So it's like they thought this out very well. However, this deck just still ended up being, you know, super OP powerful just because of how all the effects synergize with each other. But you get to call up to 1 grade 1 from your drop zone to rearguard after you do the attack with this. So you just call out what you need pretty much. A lot of times you just call out Souls because this will be a 20k attacker by itself. So with your force markers, it can get pretty ridiculous pretty fast. But it is gives you 4 attacks a turn and a lot of force markers in this deck, which is very hurtful to your opponent. Moving on to our grade 1s, like I said, we have a lot of grade 1s in this deck. We have, starting off, for Drag Wizard Nice. So what Nice does is when it's placed on the Vanguard circle, you look at the top 7 cards of your deck, throw up to 1 Dragheart Luard or 1 Drag Wizard Leofall from among them, put into your hand, and then shuffle your deck. So basically when you ride this card, you're ensuring that you can fix whatever part of your ride that you don't have. So sometimes you have a Leofall but not a Dragheart, able to get a Dragheart. Sometimes you have a Dragheart but not a grade 2, so you need a Leofall. And then sometimes you have both, which is, if you have both and then you find both in your top 7, I would particularly go after a Leofall, like I said, because on the turn 2, the double Leofall play is just really, really strong, and it's really, really broken. And then the second ability of Drag Wizard Nice is when placed by your card's ability, you can Soul Blast 1 and your opponent has to choose one of their rearguards and retires it. So this is good for when you want to help board wipe your opponent. There are just so many skills in this deck that retire cards that you can really just board wipe your opponent with so many different effects. So you really just want to be sure that they are rearguards that you do want to actually blow up, because if you're just wasting soul, you could be Soul Blasting out Luard cards when you don't want to. So just keep track of that. There are also other reasons that you would want to Soul Blast in this deck. So make sure that the reason, if you're using Nice, make sure that that's the reason that you want to be using it for. So speaking of one of those reasons, we have 4 Abyssal Owl as our next grade 1. So Abyssal Owl says this ability's cost may be paid with Soul Blast 1 if the grade of you and your opponent's Vanguard is the same. So the only way that you have to actually counterblast 1 for this card's ability is if you are pretty much a different grade from your opponent, which will mean if you went first. Like if you went first, you will pretty much always be a different grade from your opponent until they get to grade 3, because you get to be 1 grade ahead of them every turn. However, if you went second, you're probably, you know, if you're keeping up with them in riding, you will always be the same grade as them. So if you go second, this allows you to pay a Soul Blast for the cost in the early game, and then when you get to the mid-late game, it doesn't matter, you get to pay a Soul Blast anyways. So this card, when placed, Counterblast 1 draws a card, and then obviously if you're the same grade as your opponent's Vanguard, you get to Soul Blast 1 for the cost instead. Then we have 3 Knight of Strict Order Souls. We cover this card pretty simplistic. If you have 5 or more grade 1 rearguards, this unit gets plus 15k power, so it becomes a 20k booster or a 20k attacker by itself. Very good. Then we run 2 Cherishing Knight Brandwin. This is pretty much just an additional way, if we don't find it off of Nice, to try to get us into Dragheart Luard, because this is a check top 5, search for a grade 3 card. So Branwen's abilities, it has 2 abilities. First one is a continuous Vanguard rearguard ability that says during your turn, if your drop zone has 3 or more grade 1 cards, which is also synergizes with this deck, this unit will get plus 5,000 power, so can become a 13k attacker or booster by itself. Very good. Makes good numbers, especially with force markers. And then its second ability is when placed from hand, you can look at the top 5 cards from your deck, reveal up to 1 grade 3 card from among them, put into your hand, shuffle your deck, and then if you put a card, discard a card. So you can just discard a grade 1 for getting a Dragheart, knowing that you want your grade 1, you want your drop zone to be full of grade 1s anyways. So very, very good card. Then one of our most important, if not the most important grade 1 that we have in my opinion, is 2 Black Sage Sharon. So this is the card that allows you to keep your resources alive, because when it's placed due to the ability of your card, you get to Soul Blast 1, countercharge 1, and then this unit gets plus 3,000 power. So it can become an 11k attacker or booster, and it also refunds your counterblast, and you just have so many cards in this deck that would counterblast. So having that Black Mage Sharon and just having it be recyclable through Luard just makes it very, very, very good. And then for our last grade 1s, we run 1 Hardship Sage Decron and 1 Knight of Accomplishment Deliet. So what Decron does is, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, all of your front row grade 1 units get intercept. So this helps you because you always want to have a full board of grade 1s. So this will help you because you will have 2 grade 1s in your front row, and they'll, all your grade 1s are 10k shield. So being able to intercept with them for 10k shield also just boasts the defensive power of this deck as well. So this is a tool that I think that they shouldn't have gotten, but they did anyways. So it's cool. This is one of my favorite decks, so I'm not mad that it's strong at all. And then Deliet's skill is when placed by your card effect, you may soul charge 1, and this ability may only be used by a card with the same name once per turn. So that's the only reason why we run 1, is because you can only use its skill once per turn anyways, even if you had multiple copies. So I use this card to soul charge so that we can use our soul blasting abilities without soul blasting out our Luard cards if necessary. And then for our starter, we have 1 Drag Prince Root. So what Root does is it does what every other standard starter does, which is when rode upon, draw a card, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, put a quick shield ticket into your hand. So I don't think you have any discard effects except for, like Branwen in this deck. So your quick shield ticket is not really useful except for just guarding with it. So, it just adds a little bit additional shield to your hand. And then for our triggers, we run 8 crit, 4 draw, and 4 heal, because this is a highly aggressive deck. So definitely checking those crits against your opponent will make them hurt bad. So we run 3 Darkside Trumpeter, 3 Death Feather Eagle, 2 Grim Revenger, 4 Dark Shield Maclear, which is our draw trigger, Sentinel trigger PG, and then 4 Abyss Grail, which is our new heal trigger in the deck out of this set. So now we're going to be loading up the Luard games. So starting with game 1, looks like we are playing against Murakumo. This is the Yasui build. So our opponent starts with a pretty bad hand. To be honest, I didn't even know that his hand was that bad, because obviously when I was playing I couldn't see his hand. But you guys do see that we start off with a Leofall and a Luard here, so we're pretty tight. And then we also get another Leofall off of the Niece. So we're perfectly set up to control the game, and our opponent also has the G-Assist, which is honestly in my head when I said GG. At this point, looking back, because this was my first time playing the Luard deck, so I didn't know how powerful it was going to be innately. But looking back, like, that was just GG when my opponent G-assisted there, because I took a damage. I used Leofall's skill to search my deck for a Sharon. I used Sharon's skill to Soul Blast 1, countercharge 1, and then gets plus 3k. Then I go for another Leofall, counterblasting 1 again, searching my deck again for an Abyssal Owl. And then I changed it basically because we weren't on the same grade, so I wouldn't have a counterblast to use its skill anyways. So I just went ahead and called the second Sharon out, used Sharon's ability, Soul Blast 1, countercharge 1, get plus 3. Then I called out 2 Souls, and then I attacked for 10 just to rush. And then I attacked for 21. He took it, gets a heal trigger, but does not heal. And then I attack for 21 again, and he blocks with a heal trigger, which is pretty bad for him. So then he attacks us for 9 to our rearguard. We let it go, because who cares about that? Then we ride into Dragheart Luard, getting a force marker to our Vanguard circle. And then we retire 2 grade 1s to use Luard's ability to draw a card. And then because our drop zone now has 4 grade 1s, our Luard skill is free. So we put 2 cards back. And then we go into our deck to search a drag driver. And then we get another force marker, which we put over here on our rear guard. So now we use drag driver skill to search out a Morphessa and a Black Sage Sharon. And then we Soul Blast 1 to countercharge once again and get plus 3k. And then we play Deliat, so we attack for 15. And we didn't really need to overcommit to playing a full grade 1 board this turn, so that's why I didn't do it. So we check the draw trigger, and then we attack our opponent for big, and he takes that as well. So then our opponent goes to grade 3 and rides Stealth Rogue of Revelation Yasui, playing out a board, and then uses the Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1 to copy 2 units on his board. So you guys can see that he already had 2 Yasui Tenmas. He gets another one, and then he gets a Takehime as well. So then he attacks us for 27, which we took. And then he put a unit back to our deck, which we don't really care about because we searched it out anyways. So then he puts another unit back to our deck. He attacks us for 20, which I guard for a 2 to pass with a single grade 1. He does not get it. And then he discards 2 cards to ride Tenma from drop zone, and then he uses 2 Takehime skill to call out 2 more Tenmas. So he attacks our rear guard for 12, which we take, and we let Leafall be destroyed because we want our board to be full grade 1s anyways. And then he does check a front trigger, which we block 1 attack, and then he attacks us for 37. We take it, we get a heal trigger, power to Vanguard, and then he attacks us for that column as well, and we block it. So we actually draw for turn, and we get another Drag Heart, so we're able to re-ride, getting another force marker on this rear guard circle, because this is the rear guard circle where our Morphessa is going to be stacking, basically. And so we use Luard's skill to retire 2 grade 1s, draw a card, and retire his Takehime here. And then we use Luard's skill to put 2 grade 1s back to the bottom of our deck. And then we are able to get out Drag Driver. And with Drag Driver skill, we're able to Counter Blast 1 and go search our deck for 4 grade 1s, I believe. Yeah, we have 3 Luards in the soul, plus 1 is 4, so we get to search out 4 grade 1s. As you guys can see, we searched out 2 Souls and 1 Decron because I wanted to be able to intercept the next turn with my grade 1s, assuming that there even is the next turn. So we attack for 2 crit to our opponent's Vanguard. He takes 2, neither of them are triggers, unfortunately for him. And so we use Morphessa's ability, Counter Boss 1, call a card from drop zone, and then we use Nice to destroy that Takehime, just to cripple his chances of having any kind of comeback next turn anyways. So then we attack him for 50 with 2 crit, and he takes it because it would be 50, then really big Vanguard, and then really big rear guard for 2 crit again. So really, really hard, and you guys can just see it's really, really just dominating to your opponent. Like, it's really hard for your opponent to deal with playing against the Luard deck. So then for our game 2, we're running against a Nova Grappler. Looks like we're playing against a God Hand deck with some of the new support. So we ride Nice, and as you guys can see, we already have a Leafall and a Luard. So again, we find a second Leafall, so we're perfectly set up for a good game, in my opinion. So we end our turn, and then our opponent goes and rides into Silver Fist, plays the Silver Fist on rear guard, attacks us, we no guard, we don't really care about that. We take a damage because we wanted to damage anyways, and then we go for Leafall into Sharon. Sharon refunds our cost and gets plus 3k. Then we go for another Leafall into another Sharon, refunds our cost. And then we go for another Leafall, which we drew for turn, into another grade 1. So you guys can just see how, like, literally I just plus so hard, and I did essentially nothing. I had 1 counterblast, so it was pretty ridiculous. But I attack for 18 here to our opponent's Vanguard. He takes it. I attack for 21. Our opponent takes it. And then I attack for 21, and our opponent takes it yet again. So we're able to do 3 damage. Then he attacks us for 17. We take it because we just want to counterblast. And then we go into Luard, giving a force marker to Vanguard. We use Luard to retire 2 of our Sharons. And since we have 3 grade 1s in the drop zone now, our second Luard skill is free, putting back 2 grade 1s into our deck. And then going into Drag Driver. Drag Driver gives another force marker to the rear guard circle. Then we use Drag Driver skill to call out a Deliat and a Sharon. So we use Deliat skill to soul charge 1, and we use Sharon skill to soul blast 1. Important note is we did soul charge a Luard here, so that will help us in future turns. In case you guys didn't see that, because that's not something that you naturally would have seen. So again, we don't have a need to make our full board all grade 1s yet. We just kind of play safe, and then you basically survive their next turn, and then you just blow them up on the second grade 3 turn. So you don't really have to be super greedy just because of like how much this deck offers you in terms of offense and defense. So our opponent goes for his turn, plays Huskarl, plays Fusing Striker, and plays Grip Bengal, putting a front trigger to the top of his deck, which is ensuring him a front trigger. I no guarded Vanguard because I truly did not care. There's no way that I could die, and I know that the likelihood that he dies next turn is very high. So I no guard Vanguard. He does get a front trigger, and he gets another front trigger, which again, super big rear guard columns, but we don't care about that. We had a draw trigger on defense, which we didn't even need, but that just made it overkill. And so we take the other rear guard, and then we block with 2 intercepts and Abyss Grail. And so we're at 63k guard before he ends his turn, and then we just guard with a 5k shield, being Morphessa. So then for turn, we use Luard skill to retire 2 grade 1s and retire his Huskarl, which gets rid of an intercept and lowers his guard potential by 5k shield. And then we go into using the ability of Luard to put 2 cards back. So I put back 1 Morphessa and 1 Sharon, getting into Drag Driver. Again, putting a force marker to this rear guard where Morphessa will be stacking. And then we use the skill to be able to call out 4 grade 1s because we have 3 Luards in our soul. So we call out Nice, Morphessa, Nice, and Souls here. So we actually go into Nice twice, and we Soul Blast 2 just to destroy these 2 rearguard units, just to kind of like make it impossible for him to come back, because he would have to use his whole hand to guard this assault, basically. And so we go for Morphessa skill to call out Diliat. Diliat Soul Charges 1, which ends up being another Luard card, which is really funny, because it's like this deck wants us to succeed no matter what. And so then we attack with Vanguard for 68, and that's way too big for him. So that's what she said, but, you know, or that is what he said? I don't know. Anyways, our opponent has to take it because it's too big, and yeah, we're just swinging our weight around here when we're playing Luard. Like, it's just very, very strong. So for game 3, we're actually playing against the FutureFight deck. So this deck actually caught us off guard because I think I played against the matchup wrong, in my opinion. But we have kind of a okay setup in our starting hand. But our opponent goes for Succubus and Pure Love. It also mattered, too, that in the other games we went first, while our opponent went second. So in this matchup, it was very, very important that I go first, I guess. And since he went first, he was just able to get a lot more advantage off of me, because I feel like Luard has like weak early guarding. So just the fact that he was able to go first just kind of swings the game in his favor. Especially when it's another strong deck like FutureFight. So we guard the rear guard, we take the Vanguard, we ride into Leafall, we do our shenanigans, call out a Black Shade Sharon. Then we use the skill, Black Shade Sharon, to refund us. And then we go into another Leafall, counter boss 1 yet again. Go into Dekron. And then we play an Abyssal Owl, and Abyssal Owl allows us to Soul Charge 1 to draw a card. So we attack for 13, he intercepts. Attack for 18, he no guards. And then we attack for 21, which he no guards as well. Then he goes into FutureFight, using the skill of Killer Tail and then playing out a board. And then he plays out Number of Tears, so this is what is going to allow him to plus Beyond Belief. And so we take it. We take the 33k attack, we hit a crit trigger. So we no guard Vanguard, and he actually checks a heal, which I'm pretty sure is what lost us the game, in addition to him having those PGs already in his hand with the Protect marker and the regular March Rabbit of Nightmare Land. So he ends his turn. And it was kind of strange because I, like, at all 3 points in all 3 of my games, I had a point where I thought my opponent left, and then they were just like sorry and came back. So it was very weird. But I used Dragheart skill to retire his Number of Terror, just to not have that be present in future turns. I went into Drag Driver here. I used Drag Driver skill. to search out 2, I believe. And then the cards that we searched out are Nice to blow up his Variance Killer. And then we called out a Diliat so that we could Soul Charge 1. And then the card that we Soul Charge was a Nice. So we attack for 18, we attack for 31. And then we check a critical trigger, putting all to rear guard, and then we attack and our opponent blocks it with the Sentinel crit trigger. So as you guys can see, since our opponent's playing a Protect deck, and it's also a strong Protect deck, that he has a lot of shield in his hand with a lot of offensive pressure too, so it's really hard to deal with. So our opponent goes for Mounted Executioner, then Variance Drag form to add back a Rhodia, and then he plays Rhodia from his hand, and then Rhodia actually gets double the power of what Charlotte would give just because of its own effect too. So it becomes a 37k by itself. And I didn't have that much shield in my hand. Naturally, that's not the PGs, so I decided to guard that first 28 and then take this 37 and hopefully hit a damage trigger. However, I did not hit a damage trigger, which is unfortunate. And then our opponent attacks for 28. And then I guarded it for 1 to pass because I basically wanted to 1 to pass and then PG these other columns and still have, you know, a Dragheart or a Drag Driver in my hand. In hindsight, I could have PG'd and just, you know, dropped my whole hand. But even then, I don't think that I would have won the next turn just because of, you know, he has all these heals in his hand and he has a PG already. So I think I was bound to lose that game anyways from the point that he went first and then healed when he was at 4-3. But yeah, just an example that it's not a end-all be-all and it's not unbeatable. Because of the post-ban list. So that has been the FutureFight Vanguard video for Luard. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like on the video, leave a comment down below, letting me know your thoughts on the build or your personal build so that people can see other ideas as well. Also be sure to subscribe, click the bell button down below, and then also be sure to check out that join button if you guys are interested in becoming a channel member, and my second channel in the description down below, Let's Plays Animes as well. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.